Remember the days when we only cared who was sticking the ball in the back of the net? Well, off the pitch is now as big as on the pitch, and owners have become a huge part of the conversation. And it's become a bit of a tradition here on the channel that we do our EFL Championship owners ranking every close season. Going to be going through all 24, ranking them from worst to best. I'm going to be looking at longevity, where these people took the club, then, now, and what has been done in between. Yes, we can look at potential and what's probably been promised going to happen, but we've got to focus on what has actually been done. Get involved down there in the comments. Remember, on average, on these ranking videos, the comments are angry, emotional, only focus on the club the commenter supports, and they want them 5 places higher. Hopefully we can try and do a little bit better than that and consider where your owner compares to the other owners, which is what I've had to do, consider all 24. And as I say, it's about what has been done. Right, shall we do it? And drum roll, please, because I suspect I don't even ask you to pause like I usually do and guess who's going to be number 24, because after 3, we're all going to say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. At number 24, Mr. Chansiri at Sheffield Wednesday. I'm sure I'll get at least 99.9% agreement on that. Absolute chaos at Wednesday. Chansiri's been in since 2015. Yes, playoff final, long time ago, but yeah, absolute chaos since then. Huge problems, points deductions, relegations, and where we are right now, which is frankly the biggest thing with these owner rankings. It's not good. It's terrible. We need him gone, and the sale thing is looking like it's going to happen at some point, but it can't happen quickly enough. And that is why Mr. Chansiri, the Sheffield Wednesday owner, is my worst owner in the EFL Championship. And number 23, Mr. Ilachali at Hull, who I kind of had quite high hopes for, but unfortunately, since 2022, he has hired and fired a lot of managers, significantly Liam Rosenior, which has come back to bite him on the backside. That particular decision, the money situation's not good. I think perhaps if he could sell, he might. And we've got this transfer fee restriction, soft embargo type thing at Hull, who merely avoided relegation on the final day of last season. It feels like he's had a bit of a gamble and it hasn't worked out. And right now, things not looking great for Hull and Mr. Ilachali, who comes in second bottom at number 23. And you'll have a laugh at this one because they were my number 1 when I did this a couple of years ago. It was everybody's dream. Can a small club, non-elite club, go and win the Premier League? And King Power managed to do that. Obviously, that history is still there, but I think there's a fair chunk now of evidence that, what do you reckon? The last 5, 6 years have been really bad, and you've essentially taken a club that won the title, won the FA Cup, was regularly up there in the top 5, and is it now a yo-yo team, or is it going to get worse? We're expecting points deductions coming in this season, potentially another breach to be announced in January, and I think as well the way perhaps that the club has conducted giving information out in terms of these financial kind of problems that they've had and the overspending that they've done. And, we can talk about the one man's loophole is another man's law. But, yeah, it's not been great, has it, the last few years at Leicester in terms of operational. Them having been the standard bearer for every football fan who dreams of getting an unlikely title win. So I've got King Power right down now in 22nd. In 21st, I got Venky's at Blackburn, and part of me feels a little bit unfair doing this because, again, they could have got in the playoffs, Blackburn, last season. Venky's have been in since 2010. I talked about longevity at the start of this, and the only problem I've got here with Venky's is it has... Do you remember the early days where it was a little bit of a farce wasn't it? And chickens running around on the pitch, and Steve Keane and things of that nature. And I think the way I'm framing this is Venky's have taken Blackburn from a regular in the Premier League to a perennial Championship team. And it wasn't too long ago we were very, very worried about the inability to get money out of India and across to actually fund Blackburn. And it looked like a very, very slippery slope about, 12, 18 months ago. So yes, they've been in it for the long term. Yes, they potentially could have been 3 games away from the Premier League had things gone for them on the last day of the season. But still, over the big picture, suspicious, I think, of Venky. And yeah, talking about suspicion, Watford, and you could argue that Watford should be much higher, the Potsos, because of the years they've had in the Premier League. And yeah, I would buy that argument. However, in terms of a fan base being upset at their own ownership, and I've spoken to lots of Watford fans, just the way that it's been handled and the Udinese thing and the constant cycling of managers, and particularly at the start of last season, they're so unhappy with the transfer business and then cleverly obviously sacked again at the end of this season. So yes, you've got those Premier League years that everybody would have wanted, and the Hogg Deeney moment, that must have been under the Potsos, mustn't it, as well. But I just feel that from the Watford fans, from the inside, that they don't much like the owners there at their club. So we'll have the Potsos down number 20. Not a million miles away is QPR. And I don't know, it feels like QPR kind of went for it. Do you remember those massive spending days? And there was that, I say hilarious, humorous stat, not humorous to the QPR fans, that Dortmund had got to the Champions League final that season and QPR's wage bill was bigger and they got relegated from the Premier League, and they were the first, to get the big fine for FFP breaches from the kind of Premier League side, weren't they? And it feels like they had these, who's the steel guy? Lakshmi Mittal. They had these incredibly rich people involved, and it feels like they've gradually lost interest. Tony Fernandez stayed. I'm going to try and do this now, and it's Ruben Gnang Alingam. Sorry if I've butchered his name there. Whatever, we try our best with pronunciations here of all kinds of exotic names from over the world. And I don't know, it feels like they're a little bit stuck in the Championship there and in need of a bit of a rocket ship. But let me know your thoughts on QPR. They've got 19th, the owners there. Sport Republic, Southampton. I don't know, maybe Saints fans will find that a little bit harsh. But my argument is that, and maybe they were going to go down anyway, but Sport Republic have essentially taken a team that was a Premier League regular, and yes, it was halfway through 22-23, and now they're a yo-yo team. So I'm being a bit binary about this. Maybe they need a bit more time, and maybe if they get more time, they'll turn Southampton back into a Premier League regular. In which case, not only will they be much higher up my list, they won't even be on this list because I won't be ranking them as a Championship owner. But you take my point that right now I can only argue that they had Hassan Hootel and a certain style, and then Russ Martin, and then what was the guy called Juric, which is a completely different style, and now they're going Will Still, and it is yo-yoing, and yeah, that is worse than when they picked it up. So that's kind of my rationale for Southampton down in 18th. Right, we're now going to go into 5 teams that the owners have barely been in for 2 years, and a lot of them not even 1 year, Sheffield United being one of them. So we're kind of in it's hard to judge category, and all we know about these Sheffield United owners is they came in December. Sheffield United missed out in the playoff finals and they sacked Chris Wilder. So that'll either turn out to be foolhardy or brave and excellent, and we'll find out. But we're kind of lacking information there on COH Sport at Sheffield United. And if I do Sheffield United next year, if they're still in the Championship, then, we'll be able to give a more accurate kind of read on how the ownership is going there. Same for Swansea. Cravat and Cohen have been in, since 2024 as well. I mean, Snoop Dogg, Luka Modric, they've spent a bit of money this summer. And I know the Swans fans had gradually got fed up of the previous American ownership as they'd gone from being an established Premier League team, and the parachute payments had dripped away, and Graham Potter and Steve Cooper and a lot of good players, Dan James and Rodon and etc had been sold, and you're kind of just stagnating. So we'll see what these guys do. I don't know how impressed I am with Snoop Dogg and Luka Modric. That feels a little bit of window dressing. We'll see what happens on the pitch with Swans. West Brom, again, Mr. Patel in 2024. And it's a club where the level is probably to be challenging at the top of the Championship to be in the Premier League. And I suppose they've kind of been doing that. We find out, again, a lot more now. It does feel like the decks have been cleared. There's no Corber on anymore. And a lot of the parachute players, that were there under Steve Bruce and, whoever else was in at West Brom. Big Val for a cup of tea, wasn't it, as well? That's all gone. And we've now got, Ryan Mason. They spent out a bit, haven't they, on the Scandinavian striker, Nat Phillips as well. So, yeah, we'll see, but not a massive deal of info there. Haven't done anything wrong. Haven't done a hell of a lot right, and we'll see what happens down the line. Exactly the same for Norwich in 14th, where the Atanasio family have now picked it up. And I suppose the complaint about Delia was that her heart was in the right place, but she'd just been overtaken by much, much wealthier people over the years. I think Norwich run very well and have run very well. So they've picked up a club, probably in a good place, and always should be challenging at least at the top of the Championship, or potentially yo-yoing and having Premier League years. So that's par for the Atanasios. That's what Delia managed to do with arguably less money in the bank. So we will see, but it's not been long enough truly to judge there. Charlton 2023, this lot came in, fronted by Charlie Methven, which a lot of people who've watched Sunderland Till I Die will immediately put them right at the bottom. But we've got to judge on what's happened at Charlton, and it's been good, hasn't it? Obviously, there's a promotion in there. They managed to get Nathan Jones down there, who my belief is he's above that level. They had a Championship manager down in League One, and I think what they've done is successfully brought Charlton back to at least the level they should be in the Championship after all those years driven by Kirbishley, bit of yo-yoing, and then just such a solid Premier League team. I know there's so much competition if you're a London club. But yeah, good so far for the SE7 group there at Charlton. We're into my top half here. Michael Eisner, the Eisner family at Pompey. And yeah, it's good. If they'd come 1 year earlier, I was just looking at the tracking, they would have had 2 promotions. They did come after the promotion in League One. And I've got to say, it took them a fair wee while to get out of League One. Certainly not as quickly as Charlton managed to do it. And we're going to talk about Oxford, obviously, and Derby are coming up in the list. All did it quicker, but it does seem a long-term commitment there. John Messinio has been a clever hire, and can they stabilise Pompey into the middle of the Championship? And then, as I always say, you're only however many points off the playoffs, and then you're only 3 games off the Premier League. That's the dream for everybody in the Championship. And it does look like there's a long-term commitment there to build. It's now been 6-7 years, hasn't it? 8 years, indeed, for the Eisner family at Pompey. So I've got them up in the top half. These ones are always confusing. So Preston and the Hemmings family, Trevor Hemmings sadly is no longer with us now, but the family are still running the club. I've been in at Preston since 2010. So on the one hand, you can have them down near the bottom because operationally, are they close to getting Preston into the top 6 of the Championship and, the Holy Grail and into the Premier League? Probably not, and that costs them a hell of a lot of money. But then on the other side, you'd have them right near the top at benevolently just ploughing money, and they know they're going to lose money year after year and push the FFP loss limits just to have the club, frankly, in the middle of the Championship. So that's subjective. That's a matter of opinion. Do you think that's foolhardy, or do you think that's good ownership? We can debate that, but you can't argue the commitment. They've been in there since 2010, and okay, maybe it looked like they might drop at points towards the end of last season, but they're still there, and we'll see how they do under Paul Heckingbottom next year. You can't argue that, ploughing money into a club and losing money year after year is in some way good ownership. I don't know. You tell me. Top 10, Doug King at Coventry. Now, this one's a bit confusing because Doug King is beloved by the Coventry fans, but I think there's a bit of confusion. I think he's very much beloved because he's not Sisu. And we have this with people who... Sheffield Wednesday, whenever someone takes over at Sheffield Wednesday, because they're not Mr. Chansiri, they're going to be absolutely beloved. And I think there was a thing that Doug King was a local guy as well and not Sisu. So that's all great, but what have you done for me lately? And so I can't put Doug King any higher than that because he's picked up a club that was running well. Obviously took out Mark Robbins, who maybe was a big reason for the club running so well, and money in the bank and developing Harmer and Gyökeres and essentially putting Coventry up with the parachute teams in terms of being able to compete at playoff level at least there. They've now got to produce. They're in the playoffs again last year. I think he's got to produce a promotion, hasn't he? I guess that's the deal. If you go in at a club that... When did he go in there at Cov? 2023. So you've gone in at a club that's just banked a load of money and been penalty kicks away from the Premier League. That's the next step, isn't it? That's the next natural step for Coventry, is to get promoted. So I can't really put him any higher because he's got to produce that. And then he won't be on the list anyway. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the non-Sisu kind of paradigm there. Number 9. So this is Mr. Thor here and Mr. Barkey. And again, they've only been in since 2022. However, I'm putting Oxford quite high because that whether it was their doing or not, to have Des Buckingham in there and get that promotion so quickly, you can't argue that Oxford are at like a 25, 30 year high, aren't they? So that's what's happening right now at Oxford, and they survived, and they're going to look to build in the Championship. So if you were to look at a long-term trend map for Oxford, you kind of would have to concede that these owners have, got Oxford where many before for 2-3 decades tried and failed. So that's why they're quite so high up my list. David Clowes at Derby. Look, maybe I'm a bit suckered in by the narrative here, but this guy went in when Derby were very close to big problems. And we always assume, liquidation and all of that, someone was going to come in. But someone has to come in, and that person was David Clowes. And he gets big props from me for doing that. This idea of civic duty, a local businessman who's going to come in. I still have the idea that he'll sell the club at some point while they're in the Championship, having done his duty there. I don't know, maybe he's got taste for it now, but he picks them up in League One. Yes, Derby are a big club at Championship level, so huge club at League One level, and he's taken them up, but they are pushing now as well. We think this lad from MLS is going to be a big spend, and they pushed the boat out to get John Eustace, and I guess that was pretty brave, and it worked as well. So that's my reasoning. It's mainly the civic duty and going in there and the rescue job there by Mr. Clowes. That's why I've got him up at number 8. And at number 7, Mr. Steve Lansdowne, who 1996 first involvement in terms of, or been involved since. I'm not sure he's been majority owner, but my argument here is a little bit like the Preston argument of someone who's just ploughing money in year after year, but also the then and now thing. I went to Bristol City back in the day before that stadium was built up, and it's that old cliche, isn't it, of that area of the world and a Premier League club. And I'm sure Bristol City fans are bored of hearing it. But the setup, the infrastructure is all there. And I don't know, maybe they've just been caught by the P&S rulings tightening up. And as close as they got 2018-19 before last season, where they were in the playoffs again. So, I don't know. I've got Lansdowne nice and high for building a club to a point where they haven't been. I know, Bristol City fans are like, oh, well, it's, blooms off the rose here and it's not necessarily working as well and it needs a rocket. But in terms of from where to now, I think he needs a lot of credit there, Mr. Lansdowne. But you can debate that in the comments. Stoke City and the Coates family and Bet365. So look, if we judged it on 2006 to what? When did they get relegated? 2018? It'd be number one, wouldn't they? Because essentially you take Stoke City, I think the stadium was there, but the involvement goes way back with the Coates family into, I think, the late 80s. Although it came up when I Googled it, 2006 for, the kind of big ownership thing properly starting. And just years in the Premier League with Tony Pulis. And God, they're even with Mark Hughes, they're like finishing ninth or what have you, weren't they? They were just the established team that had got their way into the big league. So if you took that, the Coates family would be number one. If you took the last, whatever it is, 7 years, they'd be number 24, wouldn't they? It's been ridiculous, hasn't it? They've spent money hand over fist. They've lost money hand over fist. We've had a stadium sale to pretty much probably avoid a points deduction and an FFP thing. I'd have to look into the numbers to confirm whether that was true. I know they definitely did the stadium sale like a lot of clubs or a handful of clubs did in the first, kind of knock-ins of PSR coming in. But they've, I don't want to say laughing stock. It's become a bit of an in-joke in the Championship. Oh, Stoke will hire a manager, back the manager. They won't get up the table and they'll sack the manager, rinse, repeat. And they have been doing that for the last 7 years. So I'm a bit torn on the Coates family there. But in terms of legacy, all those Premier League years, you just cannot argue. Right, brace yourself, because this is the one that I'm probably going to get the most triggered comments about. Knighthead, Birmingham, I've got fifth. And just stay calm before you comment, Birmingham fans. Just hear me out, because I'm sure a lot of Birmingham fans would put Knighthead at number one. And to satiate those triggered Birmingham fans, I'll say if this was based on potential, Knighthead probably are number one. We'd expect Birmingham to be in the Premier League before long and, take the football out of it for a deprived area around St Andrews. What they're about to do with the sports quarter is brilliant. I know they're there to make money, but if they're going to create jobs in a deprived area, that's all absolutely fantastic. So if this was on potential, Knighthead probably would be number one. I will concede that to any upset Birmingham fans. But we have to judge this on what's been done. And obviously, there is Gary Cook, there is Wayne Rooney, there is a relegation. And if I was being really flippant about it, I would say, well, Knighthead have ploughed a lot of money to, take a team into League One, score 111 points and take them back to the Championship. And the expectation is the Premier League now for Birmingham. So, yes, in terms of potential, it's massive and probably number one, like I say. But we need to now see it on the pitch, don't we? And we need to see the building work and the infrastructure. I know loads has been done already. So they're kind of in a holding pen, just ready to go there, Knighthead. But I hope if I've got calm, considered Birmingham fans and not just angry ones who wants to flip out in the comments, they'll understand you can't really put them any higher than that at the moment when other owners have been in longer and produced, the expectation, Premier League promotion. Other people have done more at this juncture. There we go. Have I got away with that? I'm going to get some cross comments, I know. But I've got to be honest on here. I'm not going to pander to any fan base. And I love what Knighthead are doing, but it's got to be done. Because I'm about to talk about owners who have done more and over decades, frankly. And look, whenever Ipswich are concerned, the people who aren't Ipswich fans accuse me of putting them artificially high because I'm an Ipswich fan. And then the Ipswich fans accuse me of putting them artificially low to persuade the people that aren't Ipswich fans that I'm not biased. As I always say at this point, you're both full of crap. I'm being honest. I'm trying to rank this properly. And I've got Ipswich fourth. It's not been long. You can't argue with the double promotion, though, can you? And a lot of Ipswich fans, well, no, I hate, this is my New Year's resolution not to do that. I'm going to speak for myself. I do think that Game Changer gave Ipswich fans the club back after the Marcus Evans ownership debacle. And you might not think an American hedge fund with billions in it is the most romantic thing in the world, but after watching your club stagnate for years, watching them get a double promotion was just about the most romantic thing you could have found. So I think Ipswich have got to be, in terms of an ownership coming in and just getting everything right for the first few years. There's been a relegation. Now, you know, whether that's the ownership's fault or not, it's probably not. The debate is very, very hard at the moment, isn't it? So I've got Ipswich up in fourth there with Game Changer, with that double promotion really key. And in third, I've got Millwall. Now, I guess some people will disagree with me on the basis of the, you know, that I've been big on the what have you done. And in terms of league positions, you would have wanted to see at least one playoff campaign, wouldn't you, under the Berylsons? But the reason why I've got them so high is, we talked about a deprived area at Birmingham, and they're in that area in Bermondsey, and they've done so much to change the kind of culture around the club and the fan base there, and change the stigma about the way that Millwall is discussed and treated by the media and by fan bases at large. I think they've done a very fine job of doing that, and it's just terribly well run, isn't it? We never hear about transfer fees, always undisclosed, contract announcements, and then on the pitch, obviously, if you've got Tony Cascarino and Teddy Sheringham, and you know there was a year I think in the top flight, but it's at a peak, you know, that it's been for decades essentially, and I just feel the competition in London to get young players, and you know, is so stiff there. Obviously, there's a bit of narrative because the tragic death of Berylson Senior, it was a year or two ago, wasn't it? And it's still in the family there. So I like the whole story. I like the slow burn of it. Maybe for it to really justify third spot where I've got it, one playoff campaign like Lansdowne's got at Bristol City, you know, would be good. But I think in terms of what have you done, where have you taken it from, and all of those intangibles off the pitch, I've got to have Millwall high up. And second, Steve Gibson, and God, you talk about longevity. So it says 1994 on my notes here, but I know he was involved in the liquidation thing in helping Borough in 1986. I can't even add that up. What is that? That'll be 40 years next year. Gibson's basically been in and around, you know, Borough ownership. And I think we remember Ayresome Park. Most of us watching here, you youngsters probably won't, will you? But it's gone from Ayresome Park to the BT Cellnet, which is now the Riverside, obviously, and that infrastructure was built. And again, sounds like I'm patronising to these places, but fairly deprived area, you know, a sort of port town, isn't it? Middlesbrough, I think I'm right in saying that. And he's really built up that club. Years in the Premier League, and Janino and Brian Robson and Nicky Barmby and all of that stuff I can remember. And bless him, it's not, you know, it's been one Premier League year probably in about the last 10 or 15 now, hasn't it? But he's always having a go, always dipping his hand in his pocket, always pushing. So for those reasons, the liquidation thing, the longevity, the building of a club, yeah, could there have been more Premier League years? Probably, but, you know, take most of the names on this list and ask, would you swap that amount of Premier League years for what you've had? And they probably would in terms of what Steve Gibson's produced. Here we go. By process of deduction, You know who my number one is. And I said maybe the Nighthead one would trigger people. This will as well. And I'm not trying to, but I'm putting Rob and Ryan and R. Muck Reynolds, or whatever the company is called, at number one. And I've got to. I know people will hate it because they'll be like, oh, it's only been 4 years. But in those 4 years, they've basically taken a club and completely transformed it. A triple promotion. You may not like the Disneyfication, and I was in the bloody getting mugged off in the documentary, so I've got more kind of issues with it probably than most. But I don't know who's the biggest club in the National League. Southend, Carlisle. Take one of those two clubs, and if I told you take over now, and in 4 years they're in the Championship and they're on Disney and they're being talked about across America, you just can't argue that the steepest trajectory of any club. Yeah, Steve Gibson's got more longevity. Yeah, Berylson's and Clowes have got a better kind of storyline, etc. Yeah, Nighthead will probably eclipse them in the future. Fine, understand all of that. But from where they took it, what they've done, and where it is now, and that trajectory, it can't be matched by any Championship owner. Maybe last year, Ipswich. But again, we have this weird thing where we're ranking Championship owners, where if they do hit the Holy Grail, we're not ranking them anymore because they're literally in a different league, in a different level, so they don't even come into the conversation. So, look, that's my rationale. You're in for 4 years, you completely transform the club. I get the argument, it's not romantic, but wouldn't you like it to happen to your club? Be honest. Be really honest. Imagine you're a Southend fan and what happened to Wrexham now happens to Southend. You'd like it, wouldn't you? I bet you would. But there you go. I understand why there's suspicion around that. And I understand why that may trigger some awkward responses in the comments. There you go. There is my list of owners ranked. Get in the comments. Again, I always say it. Try and keep calm. It's supposed to be a little bit of fun. It's not that important what this bloke saying on the internet is. But again, if you're an angry person, you're probably going to send me an angry comment. If you're an emotional person, you're probably going to send me an emotional comment. If you're a sad person, you're probably going to send me a sad comment. And if you're a lovely, reasonable, considered person, you might send me a lovely, reasonable, considered comment. So look, go on, let it burn in the comments. Understand I've given reasoning for everything. And if you are able to give your opinion, and I know it'll be on your club, and again, based on other owners, without insulting me or belittling what I've said, then that would help. But who am I kidding? Like that's going to happen. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on all of that good stuff. What have we got to link up here? I should have planned this out. What went up on the channel yesterday? We had a look at Sheffield United, didn't we? And their chances of bouncing back after playoff heartbreak. There you go. It's been a long weekend. I was on solo parenting duty yesterday. And we spoke with the brilliant Callum Fowler about League One. So go and check either of those out. And get in the comments.